Hello, folks. Zaide here, back with another episode of DramaQuest. I'm excited today to bring you our Cello history podcast. This should be a spicy one, I hope. We'll probably talk about mischief and some other stuff, maybe some dev corruption, who knows. With us today is none other than FranktheBank, the illustrious, the notorious, the hated, the despised, the loved. Maybe one of the most divisive players I know. Frank is with us. I'm excited. But before we pass it over to him, I just want to thank our newest patrons, Edward, Seppi, and Mike. Thank you guys so much for joining the Patreon. It helps a lot. Some of you might be thanked in another lore episode that was like recorded before this, but it's going to come out after this. Anyway, thanks for your support. It does help. And Frank, passing it over to you. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Zaide.
Oh, it's my pleasure, dude. So for those who don't know, Frank and I, on again, off again, guildmates, and longtime frenemies. We started playing together. We knew of each other, I think, on Agnarr, right? Yeah. But Frank, how did you get into EverQuest way back in the day?
So my uncle got me into EverQuest back in, I think he started his first account in September of 99. And he was a ranger out of Sherfall Glade. And when he was at work, I would play on a character I had on his account. And then I would get mad when he returned home from work. Because I was, C99, I was like 10 or 11. And then when he was home and playing, I would just sit in a chair over his shoulder, watch him. And that's how I consumed it until Kunart came out.
Yeah.
And then Kunart came out. He convinced his mother, my grandmother, to get me my own. She would pay for my account, and he would buy me like my separate own computer. And we both made Ixars. I made a Monk. He made an SK, Slake, and Soul, with 2 S's at the start.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, we adventured a little bit together, but, being a kid, my playtime outweighed his. So kind of just grew from there, like exploring. It was really cool being an Ixar and being hated everywhere. Because the first thing we did after we get out of like the Field of Bone area is like we want to go to the Bazaar or Common Lands.
Yeah.
And on at the time, he started his first character on Khazak Thul. And then when we rolled together, it was on Strom, which was at the time a new server.
Do you guys just want to go to a server because it was like a fresh start for everybody there?
Yeah, it was like, the first time I was rolling a character and like, he was like, okay, we'll both start fresh and there's this new server opening up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact timeline of Strom of how early we were on it. But it was like a new server, something like that.
They used to do those a lot back in the day. Like almost every expansion, you get a fresh run, it felt like.
Yeah. So, and I played Strom from 99 or from 2000 until I left for college in 06.
Wow.
And I kind of played off and on until like 07.
Wow. So most of the people that I talked to had that period around like 02 to 04 or even longer where they quit. You didn't take that break. You stuck with it through Omens and GOD.
I took a couple month break when the Luckman came out, because as a kid I was like, Cats on the Moon. This is whack.
Stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I missed, for me as a kid, I just missed my Monk. Yeah. I missed pulling. I missed exploring areas with Feign Death, that kind of thing.
Did you have a big social experience in EQ back then, or were you more into the gameplay?
I was almost entirely social after I got a hang of the game. The draw was almost entirely social, because me as a 12, 13, 14-year-old being able to converse with like these adults and like, socialize and stuff like that was really cool.
Sometimes I think that back in the day, EverQuest was just 10,000 14-year-olds thinking that they were talking to adults who didn't know they were 14. Like everyone's just cosplaying.
What was crazy is, so my My mom at the time, back in 2002-ish, 2001-ish, something like that. She for a job she sold adult novelties,
Mm-hmm.
and this got through the grapevine of my guild, and so I had these adults hitting me up, me like, "Hey, does your mom have this and this?" And I was like, I'm 14.
Right.
Please talk to her." So like we had each other's house phone numbers,
Nice.
and they would call and order stuff from my mom, and I thought it was cool just that like these people I met on the internet are talking to my mom. Um, it was kind of surreal.
Yeah, back then it was this weird thing where like the internet and the real world were two totally distinct things, and whenever
Yeah.
they crossed over, it was like having like a crossover episode. It was like when the Power Rangers met the Ninja Turtles. You're like, what do you mean my guild leader ordered a dildo from my mom?
Yeah.
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 That's
And
awesome. That is really cool.
yeah, it was cool. Like, I don't know.
So you said you went to about 07?
Yeah.
And then how many years were you off before you hit a TLP? Was Agnarr your first TLP?
Agnarr was they sometime in that decade they gave free heroics, and I was like, oh, this would be cool. And so I like logged in, I found my old monk account, and I heroic them from he was 74. I remember this because I logged back in from a hiatus. My guild was raiding Ashengate.
Oh,
And they're
shit.
like, hey, I was like, hey, welcome back, blah, blah, blah. I was like, hey, what do I need to do to catch up? They're like, hey, just get to level 75. We'll help you do the rest. And I got to 74 soloing on a monk. And before I logged out in Direwind Cliffs, I was solo pulling mobs to the zone line of Ashengate. So I had a zone line to like escape to.
Yeah.
And I logged out 74 and didn't log back until the heroic came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, speaking of Ashengate, I fucking love raiding Ashengate, dude.
Actually, it's a lot of fun. I really am a big fan, especially playing live now. I'm a big fan of those trash clears.
Yeah.
Ashengate and Frostgrip, both the same, like huge trash clears, and then boss.
Yeah.
And I think the trash clear is real. Honestly, the trash clear is really where bigger and or better guilds get to separate themselves from smaller or worse guilds.
Right. There's like a focus element there, like performing when the content isn't gonna like kill you.
Yeah, I mean, we would pull 12, 15, 20 mobs and we're like, just handle it. And people are like, oh, I'm dead. We're like, just get rezzed, either log in, log out, or just med for a sec. But like, we have enough bodies to where we don't need everyone fully buffed at all times to do trash mobs.
Right.
Like, we just need to chew through this. And if people die, then they die.
Yeah. I mean, especially that Ashengate 1 fight where you're just fighting like an army of trash kind of as the event.
Yeah.
I remember like on Mischief this round, we just kited everything the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kill things as you're kiting, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. And for people who don't realize this about Frank that are watching this now, Frank has raided every raid in EverQuest, like straight up from Classic, Lord Nagafin Finney to current live content, cutting edge stuff. And Frank has been in Faceless on Bertoxilus now for years, top 10 guild worldwide, which is, saying something, I suppose. But the point is that like Frank is intimately familiar with all raid content from TLPs and live play in all these eras. So when you talk about like your thoughts on like the trash clear, I think that's super. It's super interesting to me because there was a period of time where everyone was like, "Oh, trash in my raid zone, terrible."
And it's not until you get it all removed that you're like, this is like the live design for people who don't know is you get usually one DZ, you pull it, you zone in, and there's the boss. And it sounds great. It kind of wears on you because there's one travel boss is always the most annoying boss for every guild, which gets a little easier with like banners and stuff. But you can, as long as 12 people run, you can teleport the rest of the guild there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's just like you kill this boss and then you're done, and you do loot and you have to wait till loot's done, and then you just move on to the next one shot. It's just one shot, one shot, one shot, and there's no continuity.
Yeah.
There's once in a while, like 2 expansions ago, Terror of Luckland, we got Umbral Plains, which had 3 bosses in the same zone, which was cool because then you didn't have the zone time, you know. You could just set up at the next boss, but that's really rare.
How do you feel looking back on TACV, which was like the first big zone that I felt was just like boss rush?
TACV is cool. Man, I have a lot of good things to say about TACV because, so TACV's design, I think, is amazing. I know it doesn't have a lot of trash, but it does have trash you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's very impactful trash.
Right. Like you cannot, the whole deal of pulling 12, 15, 20 mobs, like those mobs are basically as dangerous as a flurry master is.
Yeah.
If your warriors like killed the mob and like we're all going to go to the bathroom, like you got to pray that a paladin SK and pray that you just don't get one rounded, because even in best in slot gear, they can just decide you die.
We used to always make our bad tanks tank the trash mobs because we wanted them to see like, oh shit, I need to work on some stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course.
Or like if you had a really conky tank, sending them in there and like they won't pop defensive and they'll just get rolled.
Yeah.
Like, no, you have to use defensive on these.
Yeah.
Some of them.
And so I think TACV's design speaks a lot of volumes because, one, you have Zarek at the front, very hard mob, probably like the 3rd hardest mob in there.
Yeah.
As the gatekeeper. But your reward for beating Zarek is you can do the 2 Zuns that are very well, you can do South Snake, which is much easier. And then you can do a Zun, and then you can do 2 net. Yep. But if you want to do more loot, you can do North Snake and Balance or Race Car. You have choices.
Yeah.
On Mischief, it's a little less important because randomized. But like if you're target farming stuff on a normal server, you have a lot of flexibility on what you can do. Like, do we need B-Bobs? No. Then we're not doing Balance anymore because no one likes to fight.
Yeah, terrible fight. I can imagine the pain in the dick it was doing Balance without extended target. You know what I mean? I can't go back now that I've had it.
Just like, I don't know. Well, if you're on Vent, it's a little easier, but my guild wasn't back in the day.
You have to say the percent that you're going to, and people have to really stick to it.
Yeah. And like my guild back in the day wasn't on Vent. We didn't have, like TeamSpeak or anything like that. It was just text. So you'd just be typing the percent all the time, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always like some pet still on it that's fucking it up.
Yeah, a wizard crits a nuke, and you're like...
All right, so you did Agnarr. You were in What the Guck, right?
What the Guck.
Were you an officer in there?
I originally joined Agnar, and I made a paladin strictly because I didn't plan to raid. I was like, I'm just going to mess around the server. I know that warriors are the raid tanks, and I'm not going to raid, so I'm going to do the group content tank. And then I know everyone's going to roll Shadow Knight because everyone's talking about Shadow Knights. Like, I'm just going to be the paladin.
Right.
I'm going to fight some undead, and I'm going to live in Lower Guck, and it's going to be chill.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to know me as the chill bro paladin.
That's definitely what you were known as.
And I'm going to roll in a Erudite so that I can get the hate shield, the shield of Starwalk Seas, and be a baller. And no one else is going to be an Erudite. And then finally, I talked to a guy in EC Tunnel or Commonlands, and he convinced me to join as just a casual dude so I can group. And then I hit max level, and I didn't have anything else to do, so I decided to join them on a raid. Their first raid was Nagy. I think we didn't even get Nagy dead because we only fielded like 30 people.
Yeah.
But it was, and I was kind of disappointed, but I was like, oh, this community stuff is fun. Like, it's fun doing stuff as a group. And then also there were 2 other Erudite Paladins and a Erudite SK in that guild. And I was like, okay. How did I find the only guild on the server
Right.
with every erudite knight?
That's so funny. Erudite paladins are the swaggiest of swag, in my opinion, though.
You do not care about stats at
Right.
all.
No, you are fashion quest forward. Now, I think you and I sort of remember me and you having some kind of encounter in Plane of Fear during Classic on Agnarr. Am I crazy?
Um,
We were just like talking in OOC or something.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I would have been, because I would have been just farming, because I was in
Hmm.
there until I got it. Well, I was in there for basically the entirety of Classic because after I got my full, actually, I think I went the whole entire Classic without seeing Valorium legs or something like that. But like,
Damn.
I was just in there farming for guildies. They would be like, I'd be like, hey, does anyone need fear stuff? Like, come in here and chill and blah blah blah. And then you rolled through, and I think you like, told us you were gonna pull something, probably Kazik, I assume,
Probably,
or
yeah.
Draco.
Yeah.
Just be careful. We're like, nothing. Like, okay, there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, and as far as like top guild, like I never at that point I didn't really have a concept of like there was a top guild or like that kind of thing.
This would kind of become a point of contention between us later in our history, but like you kind of don't like the idea of top guilds, right? Or like what's your view on like competition in racing and all that stuff?
Well, it's really different than yours.
Yeah.
As we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But
and hey, people need to know that my view is not a healthy view. You know what I mean? I'm not an example.
I think first off, competition is healthy, like in a vacuum, right? Like just in society, right?
Right.
Competition breeds better outcomes, usually. But for me, it's usually just the extreme until which people take it to, which I didn't really have a good understanding on Agnarr of. And but it became much more apparent on Selo, and then Selo, and then witnessing these other servers where some guild leaders just avoid rolling on certain TLPs that have certain people already rolling guilds. And
it's people like duck each other.
And I'm just like, you're not really competing. Like, and the whole, like I hear stories from Finney, there was good competition, and then Agnarr had a great storyline, and I attribute a lot of that good storyline to True Sedation, because True Sedation was the big bad villain.
Mm-hmm.
And they allowed, like, Faceless could be the top guild while not being the number one villain for just being the top guild.
And because there was like this MQ guild.
There was this MQ, like epic stealing,
loudmouth, yeah.
Oh my god. Like gnome warping, Elderon, like just disgusting guild. And like back then people cared about people like on Agnarr Flames, there was that like quick tune and stuff talking about Harry Potter maps, and everyone's like, clutching pearls.
We weren't so jaded back then. Even like kill stealing epic shit. If you posted about someone kill stealing your epic on Mischief, people were like, "Get more DPS, shut up."
Even True Sedation, within True Sedation, there was people that left over cleric.
The Begurgle crown thing, right?
The Rage Fire. They would like someone else would spawn the Rage Fire.
Yeah.
And then True Station would boom. And there was clerics that left True Station because they're like, nah, like Cleric Mafia is not like this.
That's how we got Cabinet Space. That's how we got to Etheria, because Etheria was like, this shit's not kosher. You know what I mean? And I was always I was always working people in other guilds, So I hit up Etheria, and I don't know how I got a tag on it. You know what I mean? But I knew there was something there. Yeah. And then Etheria was just willing to like play spy games with me and give me all that information on Trucy.
I don't know how you identify those tags, but you do it consistently.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't like we've shared information with each other. Yeah. And I'm just like, how does he find someone every time?
Yeah, it is weird how it happened. At a certain point, I think people start to come to you. You know what I mean? Okay, so you guys, you stayed in that guild the whole run, and then after the server was done, progression was complete. You guys eventually rolled into Faceless Empire, right?
Yeah, there was a brief stint in there where we merged with Knights of Alanzek
Mm.
because we ran into a wall on Ralosek in time because we had 2.5 warriors.
Yeah, that is rough.
And Gorgasm and one other warrior were basically the only geared ones. Like Gorg was always chasing basically faceless warriors on gear. He was always planning and mapping out gear and stuff. Really, really big dumb stuff. And but like our half warrior wasn't even in like full elemental gear, just still had VT pieces.
So he was just like waiting for the bad round to die, basically.
Yeah, so we tried everything. This is back before Dragon Scales existed in their current form, because we even looked. Dragon Scales had a damage cap at the time of like 10k. Yeah. Or like, okay, that's like 2 bad rounds.
Yeah.
We tried everything. We had Gorg tanking without defensive first for the first 20%, and then like the weak tank, it just never worked out. So we merged with Knights of Alanzek, and me and the guild leader did a spreadsheet answering questions like who would be the next guild leader, what, all these stuff, and then we compared answers. And we merged, and that first time raid is probably one of the strongest guilds I've ever seen on TLP. Yeah. Because we had all these knights, despite them having the name knights, we had all the knights, and they had all these like wizards. She
just had a huge DPS
just
increase.
And like, I mean, we were killing. We killed Terrace and Saren and stuff like in one defensives. Like we were just destroying. And they were amazed because everything was tanked. Like we had knights DPS in the boss because we had so many tanks. But unfortunately, after we killed Quarm,
half the guild quits overnight.
Half the guild quits. Yeah. And so we struggle bus for a couple more for like a month or two. And then that's when, one of your favorite people,
Junior.
Yeah. Hit us up.
Lana.
Well, I think I hit up, I'm pretty sure I hit up Junior, but me and the officers of What the Zek, the combined guild name, basically made a list of guilds like Zerdula, Faceless. There was a couple other guilds, and out of all of them, honestly, Zerdula was a close runner-up. The issue we had with Zerdula is that they had a PG-13 or PG chat policy, and Gorgasm's name is Gorgasm, right? Which we were like, are they gonna cause an issue? Talking to Bosch later, it wouldn't have been, but like at the time, we're like, all these guilds are gonna roll in the Faceless anyway. Let's just make a deal with Faceless that we want, and so we're not subject to someone else's deal, right? And we got, we made a great deal. We carried over some of our DKP, and then unfortunately for Junior, like the people we brought over, we made a list of the classes and stuff, and there were a lot of healers, and just a bunch of healers quit. And a bunch of those either refused to join Faceless because of shit that happened with Koidoken, like from KOVZ. And like, you're like, bro, that was like 6 months ago. Who gives a fuck? Right. But, or just various other reasons. But so, half the healers refused to join, and then the other half slowly quit. There was like one remaining druid, Styx, who stuck it out, and he later joined Faceless Selo and made the whole run too. So it's a good guy.
Yeah. So you joined that guild, and then it was probably only a few months later, Cello was announced, right?
Yeah, it was a couple months later, but like really, so my handoff to Junior was like a passing of baton, and I just was so burnt out because when I had joined. Again, joining the server, not planning to raid. Both the co-leaders of What the Gut quit, and I was made the kind of de facto guild leader. It was basically like me and a couple other people just making like council decisions, And I'm just like dragging this whole thing. Like, I don't even want to raid. Now I'm an officer. Now I'm a guild leader. And so I just wanted, in our agreement with What the Zek, I made the other person guild leader, but then they didn't like that we were changing the name from KOVZ to What the Zek. Like,
the name is always a huge sticking point.
So they quit, and I'm like, fuck, now I'm stuck with guild leader again. So when Junior finally took it, I was like, I'm done. Like, I just need to peace out. And then I thought I was done with that request. I was like, I had a great run. Agnarr was a ton of fun. There was just enough conflict to where like it was fun and exciting. And then fucking Gorgasm hits me up for Selo. And I'm like, nah, dude. And he's the worst person ever.
Of the people that I like Gorgasm the least.
I mean, that tracks with our opposing personalities because Gorgasm is basically my best internet friend.
Yeah.
Like, there are a couple other peoples in that sphere that I could name, but like, I've been friends with Gorgasm and talked with Gorgasm the longest, and like, but so that tracks.
Yeah.
He's also just the worst person in existence because he convinced me to do Selo.
So did they just invite it's weird. The forming Faceless for Selo felt like just like a thunderstorm. Like suddenly we were all in this Discord and it started out with like 5 people and then it was 500 people like instantly.
So when Gorg finally convinced me, he had talked to Junior, and Junior had made it more or less clear that Seeger was going to be guild leader, not you, and that the race was like they were gonna race, but it wasn't gonna be required kind of thing, because like me and Gorg had maintained 100% raid attendance through all of Agnarr, and we just didn't want to do that again.
Yeah,
that was our mantra going into Selo, was that we aren't going to be officers and we're not going to be 100% RA, because we knew with the reduced lockouts it was just going to be hectic, and we were like, we're just going to be chill. We're just going to see, because me and Gorg both quit within a year of each other back in the day. He quit like 08-ish. And so we both wanted to see the progression of expansions past it. And so that was Gorg's like conversation with Junior, and then Gorg relayed it to me, and I was like, all right, we can be chill. Like, fine. Like, I just don't want to do the race. I just don't want to feel compelled to play.
Right. I wonder what conversations everyone was having separately, privately, you know what I mean? Because definitely there was space for everybody, even if you weren't going to race. But I think the race was really important to Seeger. Obviously it was super important to me, but I mean, like, I talked to Seeger about it like 24/7, and we knew. We should provide some context here. First, like, if you don't already know, Cello was a special rule set server for the 20th anniversary. It had half duration lockouts, which everyone thought at first was probably going to be pretty cool, but it ended up being like the worst thing ever, because it meant you had to raid twice as much as you normally would. It also had 1 month lockouts. So you're like sprinting through the expansions, and you have to use those double lockouts just to maintain pace of the gear after you get out of like the easy shit. And it just becomes a nightmare for your personal life to keep up with it. It is like people will talk about competition, this competition, that. Cello is the most hardcore server of all time, because you were think about the worst raid that you know in EverQuest. Imagine clearing that twice as often as what you did, back in the day. It grinds you down. Now, if you've listened to the other history episodes of the podcast, you know that there have been two to three threads of major guilds that have formed over the last 10 years leading up to this, that have led to this point. You've got the Twisted Legion faction from Fippy, actually maybe even as far back as to the Insidious Vision team and ROI guys, all the way on Sleeper Combine. And then you've got a Citizen faction, and Citizen finished their sort of battle with Finny. It ended there for them. And you have Faceless, who started on Vulak, And then on Lockjaw went against like the Citizen guys a little bit and some other guilds. Then on Agnarr, we dealt with some other minor guilds. But on Agnarr, the Twisted Legion guys, who became the Asylum of Shadow guys, were with us in the beginning. We were all friends. Now, because of some drama that like the leadership of the guilds wasn't aware of, we had a lot of animosity form during the Agnarr timeline. Basically, a guy got kicked out of Asylum of Shadow on Finney. He came to Agnarr, joined our guild under a different name. And whenever we would beat an expansion faster than ever, he would go message them and talk a bunch of shit. And to them, it's like Faceless is talking a bunch of shit to us. And to us, we had no fucking clue it was happening, right? So these guys, they wanted to kill us. You know what I mean? They hated us. And we were just like being ourselves. Now, we were like a cocky guild, but the fastest ever kind of shit, that is a recruitment tactic. You know what I mean? Like that is, every guild has to find something to make themselves distinct to attract talent. That's part of what you do as leadership in a guild. And that was our thing. But these guys, when Selo was announced, they were hungry to come and prove that they were the better guild, better than Faceless, because the times for expansion clears said a different story. And it was extremely heated, like getting doxxed before the server came out heated. You know what I mean? Like fucking Ice-T and Michael Rappaport cameos. Yeah, like to a crazy level. And I'll probably do maybe like a little bonus thing where we'll show screenshots, but it was totally wild. Cheating like you've never seen on an EverQuest server since maybe like the Discord server way back in the day. And when I was talking to Seeger about it before, I don't know how much you even know about this, Frank, but Junior was correct that I was never planned to be the guild leader. And like you remember I was living in Japan at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I don't want to be the guild leader. Like we went into this role where I was like, hey, there's a certain group of officers who were just there to help run the launch push and then would kind of like vanish. That was like me and Nullify and some of the other guys.
Citadel.
Yeah, Citadel, like guys who were kind of useless after the first 2 weeks. And, but we wanted to do this race. And we always knew that TL and AOS, this guild, this clique, had a real big problem with drama and with infighting. And Seeger and I also knew that they had a real big commitment to MacroQuest use. Okay, and that's not to say that we are perfectly clean in the history of Faceless either, but there's definitely there was a disparity, you know what I mean, in the lengths that people in the guilds were willing to go to secure a win.
I mean, one big one is that the Faceless leader, Selo Faceless leadership advised that if you're someone that has done TLPs before, do not level as like change your name when you level.
Yeah, we all used fake names, or we suggested, you know. Yep. And so I joined. Everybody made a bunch of spy accounts and all the different Discords and stuff. But my thing with Seeger was we both knew that if we won the race, they would just disband immediately because they can't handle a loss. And we knew if we lost the race and the guild just quietly maintained its thing, eventually they would implode due to drama and a lack of competition. So there was two plans. Plan A was try to win. Plan B was let them destroy themselves if we lose. And that was always the plan. And we always knew that Seeger would be the one to pretty much by himself be executing that plan B. And that's, spoiler alert, it's what happened. It's what he did. But that launch race was crazy. And I don't even know if I should say one of what I did here, but we knew very definitively because it was spoken about openly in the Discord for the competing guild, which was called Amtrak, named so because they planned to train people, right? It was named after the intent to grief, the classic EverQuest griefing thing. So we knew that they were going to be using MacroQuest and EQ bot and stuff like that. We knew crystal clear what their plan was for launch. And I went to some of the guys and I was like, hey, they're going to do this. If you want to be able to compete with them, you should do it too. And we kind of like talked about it, and it was just something that we decided against. But I actually advocated. I was like, I think that if we really want to compete with them, we should all just download EQ bot or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? And I think at that time it was hard to get working MacroQuest because like you had to have like private compiles at that time for TLP still. But they had someone who was giving them a compile, and they had the guys from Cornav who were fresh off of TLP, you know what I mean, and had figured all that stuff out. And Selo also launched in Luckland, not in Classic, so the meta was fresh for pretty much everybody. But because they had the Cornav guild, and they had a guild on Cornav that the TL dudes were in called Try Me, they had become familiar with Luckland over there. They had patched it since Agnarr. On Agnarr, you could pull all those bosses to the zone line, right? After that, they patched it. So Faceless's last time in Luckland, we were just like, oh, pull all these fucking bosses, no problem, super fast. After that, there was a new meta of finding skips throughout the zone, and Faceless didn't know shit about that. So we would go on to rely on this guy. That did not work out very well. We'll tell the story, but anyway, I just wanted to give like a little context to what Junior told you, and
I mean, and I'm sure Junior's part was knowing that Gorg and I weren't going to be in the race, so he's not going to sell the race to us, right? Like,
right.
You know,
you guys didn't really have beef with me at that time, though, right? Did you have like a negative slant? I mean, maybe from like hearsay.
The only thing, and this wasn't really beef. The only thing we would joke about was when the Agnarr, like, you training the entrance of Sleeper's Tomb when, because our guys got keys and had to zone into open world before we could do the DZ, or they could do DZ. I wasn't there because I was Paladin. No one wants Paladin on first clear.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, you know, all the people zoning in, they're like, yeah, Zaide just had mobs waiting for us. And I was like, that's hilarious. How, like, that's hilarious. You know, and we joked about it internally. Cause again, the addictions, my pants, what the god coalition thing.
Yeah.
For us, all the people we sent, like, you know, cause you spun the RMT negative narrative, which I know now is like your thing to spin narratives, right? Which
well, I feel like I just got fucking Fox News.
But for us, like, it didn't make sense because like all the people we send are like super affluent people in their real life. Like, you know, they're like, who gives a fuck about 50, 100 chrono? Like those kind of people. So, but you know, I later on know that you were probably talking about some other people in that
people in our
coalition.
Guild. Yeah, people in our guild that would RMT probably.
Right.
Yeah,
and
but also like you got to look at where Faceless had come from. On Lockjaw, they left the sleeper asleep for 9 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like on Agnarr, let's do it differently. And then I said it as like a troll that we would wake the sleeper on day one, and then someone said like, "You guys won't do that," and I was like, "All right."
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that was the only thing, like the trading stuff, and I mean that was really it. Other than like just top guild stuff, like haha, we beat Faceless to X. Like whenever I'd steal a camp from like, you know, steal a camp from Faceless. Like I had it was me, a bard, and then my buddy played Necro Cleric, and so any undead camp for VT keys we would dominate. And so we remember stealing a camp from Faceless from like 2 monks and a mage or something.
Yeah.
We're like, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing serious.
Gotcha. Okay, well that's good at least. I know, like Junior and I didn't like each other. He actually kicked me out of the Agnarr guild after I like retired. I came back, I wasn't in the guild anymore. I was like, man, I made this bitch.
I love your like that you both dislike. It's great.
He was one of the only apps on Agnarr that I was like, I vote to reject this application, and they talked me out of it.
It's just the best.
It was smart. He was good in what he needed to do. He was a huge asset to the guild. Our personalities just don't work. That's all it is.
Right.
He did a lot for the guild. So going into Cello, the drama is heating up all over the forums and Discord and stuff. How much were you invested in that, or were you like following it at all?
I was definitely following it just because we were in the Discord, right? We were in the Selo Discord. Stuff gets posted. We're chatting. But again, we're still committed to not 100% RA, not, not being officers, that yada, yada.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Frank was like 100% RA.
Yeah. So, but like, you eventually somewhat gain an affinity towards your team, like the
Mhm.
people I interact with. I want us to win, but I'm not gonna do the poop socking. Like, when you, I think you were the one who offered bonus DKP for farming VT shards.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
sank the DKP system in the first like week.
yeah, so I was tied for first on recipient of that DKP
Yeah.
because I just sat on Fungus Grove for like 8+ hours a day, and I would just alarm clock every spawn wave, and and we got a run of good luck where we got like 6 shards and stuff like that, and I was like, I'm happy to help you guys win.
Yeah.
I don't want to attend. Um, the only thing I regret is honestly missing out on the first EMP because I was in comms listening, and that was really exciting. Like,
Yeah.
that was incredibly exciting.
It was one of the finest moments I've ever had in EverQuest doing that raid. And I remember I was so nervous I could have fucking thrown up, dude. It was just totally nuts. And like doing it with nothing, like leather gear, you know what I mean? Or like some shit from Evolve Burrower.
Well, tanks are wearing
Mage
summon
summon.
earrings, like
Yeah.
jewelry, because it has like five AC and like 50 health or something like that, or some whatever stats. And like some of the lesser gear tanks are where you see patchwork of reds because they have the summon plate gear.
Yep. A
I'm
little
hitting
plate
up.
of growth shit, I think. But
I
yeah.
hit Ono up every morning basically for summon plate gear because I always forgot to, turn a trader on or something with it.
Yeah.
Um, Foaming did planet growth clears.
Yep.
Again, I didn't go to that, but because I was AoE farming the deep,
Yeah.
and which was also somewhat beneficial to the guild because I would cut people deals where I was only charging like a 4 chrono for 4 hours.
Yeah.
But I was, in lieu of charging, you could pop a shared 50% XP pot, and that would be your 4 chrono,
Yeah.
just so that everyone else gets experience, right?
Right. Oh, and AA were broken on Cello in the beginning. It was really hard to get AA.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
And
did you guys have any issues leveling? Did you guys get hit by gobsexual or anything?
no, we didn't. Our only walls leveling were ourselves.
Yeah.
Gorg and I static. Gorg, his wife Doll, and I leveled static together. We knew we couldn't play our actual characters. Like, he wanted to be a warrior, I was going to be a paladin. Actually, for basically the months talking up into Selo, I was going to be an SK. I was like, fuck it. I did the paladin thing. I'm just going to be the better knight this time. I'm
Mhm.
going to be the one that can do all these stuff and stop having to like yell at people do things. And then literally all the way up until character select, I'm on comms with Gorg. I'm like, hey, would you guys hate me if I just roll paladin? And they're like, we don't care. I was
We
like,
already hate you,
paladin,
Frank.
paladin.
Yeah. Now, so did you guys had the paladin and the warrior in the static group or no?
Paladin, warrior, bard, cleric, enchanter.
Well, that's why you weren't at the first Emp raid. I'm just kidding, but yeah, how was that leveling? Was it rough? Did it feel good?
1 to 10 was the most miserable experience
Yeah,
ever.
but then it's real durable.
1 to 10 took as much time as 11 to like 30, 35 because we had no charm pet.
Yeah,
We were
no
just
DPS.
yeah. Paladin, like, warrior doesn't do any damage at that. Just So as soon as we hit 11,
99.
yeah. As soon as we hit 11, we started, and then once we wasted a whole day at Velks. We didn't have Mallow.
Mm-hmm.
So Velks, we could not maintain a charm pet at all. Like, between two of us, two enchanters, we had one charm pet about 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And so we wasted a day trying there, and then eventually went to Chardock and just charmed reds. And
Gotcha.
that was
Do like kennels.
we did Kennels was camped, but we did bank. And that was like riding the lightning because we're in no gear. We're, and we have to park the charm pets like at the front of the bank, and then we are up on the hill.
Dang.
And then as soon as we hear each other's audio trigger, we're mezzing. Like,
yeah,
AoE stunning, mezzing. Okay. Because we'll get one rounded. They're all hasted.
Shit hits for like 200 damage sometimes, and like yeah.
So
you got like 800 HP and no AC, no defense skill ups,
and like the warrior, bard, and paladin are literally in corners, just like facing the wall, just like
just doing nothing. Just
like bard just mana song, like
Really, it was like enchanter, cleric, or it was cleric, enchanter.
Yeah,
power leveling. Yeah, 2 tanks
that carrying the other half of the group.
Yeah,
but I mean, it was fun. Like, obviously, like I said, he's one of my best friends. So being on comms with him and his wife for the static was really fun. And
did you hear about the drama the other groups were dealing with?
Oh yeah, we're like, what kind of try hard bullshit? Like, what, just like gnomes warping onto like Sussy's mom or something like that.
Yeah,
just
so, like we said, like, we told everyone, like, go incognito, use fake names, but the only guilds on the server at launch were Amtrak and Faceless. Basically, there was like some addictions guys. Who cares? And who was that real shitbag racist leader of that guild? Yeah, Grisvok. Yeah. So he made a bunch of burner accounts on laptops, and he would just warp around to every zone, see who was leveling in each zone. So he knew where all the lead groups were. And then he would go to those groups one at a time and harass them. He would be on a level 1, so you couldn't do anything. And he would far taunt a mob on the other side of the zone, pull a huge train, stand in your camp, and just implode your group. And you got to think, if it's like 2 a.m. and someone trains you for 90 minutes straight, you just go to bed. You just go to bed. And this was happening to all our groups. So my group, we had a scam. We all joined Amtrak's. Well, I joined Amtrak's Discord, and I had a friend join Amtrak's Discord, and my name there was Goblin. And I said, hey, me and a friend of mine, we're going to both 3-box, and we're just going to, we're going to play. And they're like, cool, love it. And when we made our characters on Cello launch, we all named our characters things like you would name your boxes. My character was a monk named Goblin, and then everyone else in the group was like Gob Mage, Gob Sham, Gob Claire. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so we're like level 20 in Upper Guck. At that time, the furthest in the server, we're the highest level group, and this character Gobsexual appears, just warps into us, right? Level 1 naked character. So we obviously know what's about to happen. But I go to my spy account and I hit up Grisvok. I say, hey, Grisvok, I think these Faceless guys are about to train my group. He's like, what's happening? And I was like, well, we're in Upper Guck leveling, and this guy Gobsexual just like warped right into the middle of us. I think we're about to get bombed. So watch out. If you see Gobsexual, just be ready to do some shit. And he's like, okay, let me look into it. Now, Grisvok, he just sees a guy in his guild named Goblin, and he's in a group of people named Goblin shit, right? So he's like, okay, this is one of ours. It's some random guy I didn't know. You know what I mean? And then he hits me up 10 minutes later. He's like, I took care of it. You won't have to worry about them anymore. And I was like, thanks, brother. So we don't get fucked with the rest of the time. And we go to Akiva Ruins, Acrylia Caverns. We mapped out all the Zems in Luckland to find out what was best.
Yeah,
and we're in there, and we run into Drillison's group. Drillison is like, one of the top guys in there, but he's like a respectable member of this crew, as far as you can be anyway. And we bump with them, and they're like, they were getting really suspicious. They're like, there is no fucking way that 2 guys we never heard of before just came in and blew everybody out on the leveling race. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, that's like one of their guys for sure. And so they asked us to get in voice. And I think, was it Kith was in my group? I think Kith was in my group. And we made him jump in voice with Drillison and maybe Mabu and talk to them. And he because we were worried they would recognize my voice.
Right.
And he played it off. But the problem with the Acrylia Caverns is it finishes in one camp for the high level section. And they were stuck behind us. They couldn't go to the good camp. And we had the whole good camp. And they were like, yeah, we're the leadership of the guild. We really feel like you should give up that camp for us. And I was like, we're going to be done here really soon, man. I kept trying to push it. And then finally they're like, what about the VT shards? Are you getting any of those? We're like, yeah, we looted a few. Do you want us to let you know when the next one drops? They're like, yeah. And we're like, okay. And we just never, we never sent them a tell, but VT shards were dropping like every 5 mobs in there.
Oh my God. This is
And
great.
we hit 60 and I say, hey, we got 60. Kegden beat us. Kegden had his whole own story. They were, Grisvok was training Velkator the Sorcerer on Kegden's group and Velks. But Kegden and one other person in Keg's group hit 60 before my full group hit 60. And, it was weird. Like my full group did it before his full group because his group like partially broke apart. But the first 2 60s were from Keg's group and the next 6 were from mine. And so Amtrak is like congratulating us like, hey, we got like, one of the first 60s. And I was like talking to Drillson. I was like, and by the way, I'm Zaide. And then I just like name changed right there. And he's like, good. Oh, you fuck.
That's pretty good.
Now, the downside was I rolled a monk and Drillison's group rolled a warrior. So we hit 60 and then like we couldn't do anything. Right. When they hit 60 like 8 hours after us, they started killing raid mobs. You know what I mean? Because they had defensive. We didn't. It was a huge, huge, huge tactical error. And I don't know. Then it felt like we were back and forth. Like we called our first raid to Kale. You didn't come to that one, right?
No.
So we
My
called
first raid, I think, was like Grieg.
The Grieg raid was fun. That was a good raid. I remember Dansor was there and he was really good. But yeah, we went to Kale. We called a bat phone to Kale, and of course Amtrak shows up because they're on our bat phone, vice versa, and all that shit. So they show up and they're talking shit. Now, Faceless doesn't really talk shit in OOC or shout. Like we never did that. But they show up and they're talking a lot of shit. Remember, this guild is a guild that like brags about never losing open world. They're like all about that. So we're forming up at the Awakening Lands zone line to pull like KT, statue, all that shit. And Bobby's there streaming it. And Bobby's like, Zaide, be ready. Grisvok likes to get real talkative when he wins. And I was like, okay. And we pull Vindy in. And what they realized, I think, was by the time everyone was assembled, we outnumbered them a lot in terms of level 60s. Mm-hmm. And we had put like we put whatever that Shadow Knight and Enchanter like aggro buff is on like all their DPS and their clerics, Grim Visage or whatever. And we were like dispelling all their pets and shit. And Vindy came in and just rolled through a few of them and we won the DPS race. And I remember watching Bobby stream while we were doing it. He's like, oh. And then we pulled, I think we pulled Statue and we won the DPS race. And then they just left. They just fucking left. And at that moment, I was like, we could win this. So, you know what I mean? Like, they were not prepared for that.
Right.
I think we got KT, but we left with Idle up because we didn't want to do the time investment.
Right.
Now, they had a pre-planned 40 people who that they knew before the server launched who their 40 VT keys were going to be. And everybody farmed. Gear was funneled to them, and they pushed keys to them. Seeger and I, in retrospect, maybe stupidly, didn't do that because we thought it would be unfair. And it would have been unfair, you know what I mean? But it's like
there's a pro con, right? Like,
right. And then we ended up we went just like who was basically there and available on the most hardcore. And some of those people were not mentally stable. I forget that dude's name that like quit because I don't remember what it was. He sent me like a 5-page note. Yeah. But yeah, we were racing and they were ahead of us on Orbs of Lucklandite because that first 2 days they cleaned out all the low tier Luckland targets. You know what I mean?
And stuff like that.
We farmed super hard on Emp keys, fighting them all over for Emp keys. We chased them out of a lot of zones for lucid shards, especially Fungus Grove. We dominated Fungus Grove, like full raids in there, crushing them all over the place. But they were like a day ahead of us because while they were leveling, their non-VT groups were leveling in Luckland zones like Griegs and Fungus. They had groups leveling in Fungus Grove and Maiden's Eye, getting shit EXP, but funneling shards to their top 40. Right. Very smart. If you've got people who are willing to be funnel like that. So then I had a really dirty technique. We renamed a character to be visually similar to one of their officers. I forget what name we used. And then I made a bunch of hotkeys with all their characters, all their guildies' names. And I raid invited them all around their raid time, hoping they would all join my raid. And then I popped the SRA DZ to blow their SRA so they couldn't do SRA. It didn't. I think we got like 5 people or something. It didn't really work. But back then, if you blew a DZ, you were out for like 12 hours at least,
Yeah.
even if you didn't fucking zone in.
Oh, genius. That's a good.
So the other thing was RGC. You couldn't craft RGC on the server, and they locked down the RGC, or not the RGC. They locked down the remove curse mob.
Yeah,
That shroom.
RC.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I went to Seeger and I was like, we have one option here. We have to pop like fucking 10 Sra temples today and kill Rag 1 and 2. And then tomorrow do Emp as soon as the lockout's up. And we did it. And I think we got like 2 RGCs.
Yeah.
We got super lucky. So the next day we go to do Emp. They find out that we're doing Emp. So they go do their own Emp in open world. And we sent like 2 people to be like, we're not doing Emp in open world, guys. No one is doing Emp in open world, you know?
Yeah.
And we shut down the open world. So they go to the DZ. And Seeger led our first Emp raid. And I mean, it felt like it took 3 hours, but
It was a long time.
And we killed them while they were fighting Emp, and they were wiping to Emp over and over. And they were just like, I remember seeing people from their guild sending me screenshots of like QP just yelling, res, 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 res. And Grisvok, their guild leader, rage quit. He logged out when we got the server first Emp kill, like a little bitch, like a terrible leader. When your team needs you and the chips are down, you fucking ran. So anyway, he did that. And then I started getting tells from all these guys who talked mad shit the whole time. Like SA, remember that guy?
Yeah.
With his little kids next door avatar, sent me a tell like, hey man, this was good. You guys are really impressive. You know what I mean? It was all just in good fun. Sent me those kind of tells. And we get our 40 rifts out. I didn't even take a rift because we didn't set those 40 people up. So people were butthurt about rifts already. Like before we even killed them, people were like, I better get a rift. And I'm like, I don't know you, dude. So I didn't take a rift. And I also knew that I was going to be leaving soon. So I thought it would be a bad idea for me to take one. And after that, it was just lucid shard farming. They managed to kill Emp a few hours later, just barely. And then they went directly to VT, but they couldn't clear it.
No.
Do you remember the drama they had internally at that moment?
Well, I remember there was being drama about Grisvok not getting a Plains Rift.
So when he didn't get that planar rift, because he rage quit, no one logged him in to loot a planar rift, and this made him upset. Like, why would anyone log you in to loot some shit you didn't earn? Right? But he was butthurt about it. And basically, Mabu led that guild to victory. Mabu took them and went into VT, and Grisvok had to sit outside and just be butthurt, send mean tells. And Grisvok had the tendency to call people the N-word constantly. And all these logs came out about it. But like he's kicking Mabu out of the guild while Mabu's fighting Agnarr and Vex Thal for the server first, potentially the server first win. You know what I mean?
Right.
So then Mabu changes the Amtrak guild website to a picture of Grisvok in real life at his place of business.
Yes.
And it says his real name. It says Grisvok, aka so-and-so, the racist lawyer. And it's got all these screenshots of all the times he was calling people the N-word and all this other shit. That was the website for their fucking guild. And then their VTDZ closes. And I forget, that gave like a 24-hour lockout maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so they had like a 24-hour lockout. It closed before they could kill Agnarr, which meant Faceless now had 24 hours to get to business.
Didn't they go into open world first and then... They go into open world after.
Yeah, they go into open world after. And I mean, yeah, it was just such a crazy moment. All this shit came out on the forums, and like Grisvok was blaming the guys from Cornav, the Cornav clique, basically, for losing the race before they had really lost the race because they wanted to farm more gear. They went to NTOV and farmed dragons while we were focusing on like orbs and stuff. And he was blaming all of them. Aleda became a spy for me and shared all their documents with me. And it blew up in like a crazy way. We knew Grisvok sucked, but we didn't realize he was like racist.
Super racist.
He would like Photoshop go ahead. He would like Photoshop people's pictures onto like porn and share it and do all kind of crazy shit like that. So yeah, dude is just a real big scumbag. One of the few people in EQ where I'm like, I actually wouldn't play with that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just when that was coming out, I was just like, how do you think it's like how does the person like this like exist in like the world?
Right.
And like, but two, like, how do they gain a following? Like, this can't be like the first time he's called someone the N-word.
Just think how sad it is that the guild stayed together for another 6 months
Yeah, I mean, there's people that
with him as the leader.
right.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because it's just like Seeger and I were talking about. We're like, if we win, they're just going to fall apart immediately. Like we only won like small, I guess big, but not permanent victories, on the way. And they were having a lot of fucking problems with it. If we had killed that first Agnarr, I'm confident they would have, been a
100%.
1 week guild. But can you take it from here? Were you in that first VT run?
Yeah, the first successful VT.
Were you in our failed VT attempt?
No, not the one with Cuck or Not.
Do you know the story of it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I know that the highlights, like, Cuck or Not said that he was going to be able to do these skips, and then there was some drama about him not having the correct mount. So I think Kith and or Seeger RNG'd, like, opened a bunch of boxes to get him a mount.
Yeah.
And then gave him the mount, and he still wasn't able to do it. And then
his only job was to practice these skips so that we could perform them on game day, and he didn't have it down.
Yeah, and then there was a drama with, his wife is basically leaving with their child while he's in VT, and he's like, thankfully makes the correct choice to go save his family.
Yeah,
but like that obviously puts Faceless in a losing position. Like when you essentially put all of your eggs into this basket now, and this basket has imploded.
Yeah, I think the full scope of what happened there was we went to open world, led by Seeger there, and they followed us to open world VT. And we both DPS raced on the key mob for the first door.
Right.
And I think Seeger thought that they were going to membler it. So he called to not burn. And then they didn't membler it. And we, just lost the DPS race. But before that, the night before, we said, hey, at this time tomorrow, we expect to go to this zone, and we think there will be major macro quest shit happening. So we were hoping a GM would be in zone. And we didn't get the key, but you could still, everybody knew the basic jump, you know what I mean? To get past that
mini Otten's room and down to big blob 1.
Basically everyone, or at least a handful of mages, could have made that part happen. Mm-hmm. But Seeger didn't want to pull the trigger on that for 2 reasons. One is because there was a chance there was a GM there, and if you exploit right in front of them, you just get boned, the whole guild, mm-hmm. right? And the second was like, people were like, oh, why don't you just run the mage there and coth everybody? And he's like, dude, it's like a guild of people who are going to warp. You know what I mean? You won't beat them there. It doesn't matter. So then Cuck was the only option. Cuck doing the skips, and he didn't know the skips. And while he was trying to do the skips, his wife was literally leaving him because he spent the last 5 days 24/7 on EQ, taking his daughter and leaving the house. And he said, I got to, you know what I mean? He had to take care of real life.
Right. Which, like, again, commend him for actually doing that. Yeah. Even though, like, in my mind, it cost him his reputation in EQ. Like,
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. His reputation wouldn't have been hurt at all if he walked in, executed the skips correctly, and halfway through it, he was like, my wife is leaving me, I have to go. You'd be like, he did his shit. You know what I mean? It's the fact that, it's really hard. I don't want to downplay that it's not intuitive or simple to do, but there are people who can one-shot all those skips. You know what I mean?
Reese is like 90% success rate when we did.
Yeah. I mean, I think even like Ono can do all the skips, right? She knows them all now.
I mean, I as of Mischief, I don't know, because like Treasures trained us instead of doing skips.
Oh, okay.
But like, I mean, after seeing Reese do them, they're fairly hard, but once you do them probably 2 or 3 times, it's like, oh, this is cake.
Yeah. But, long story short, we lost the race to Otten by a hair, really.
Yeah.
And once the race was over, it's like, hey, pack it up. We'll come back next week with more people and just do it the way Brad intended, as we like to say. And the forums had their little fallout. And I said, hey, you know what? You guys win. That's it. Blah, blah, blah. But man, it really sucked to take that L. That fucking weighed heavy. And what
Yeah.
felt the worst was just like knowing that cheating didn't matter for reputation and EverQuest anymore. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like to me. Like, it just doesn't matter. You cheat and everyone's going to be like, well, you know what I mean? Everybody probably cheated. So who cares if they cheated? You probably cheated too. And it's like, we did not cheat. We did not cheat like that. You know what I mean?
Right. And I mean, I remember there was one dude in Amtrak killing the in Akiva
The
Ruins, the
box
turn
mob.
in,
Yeah.
the
Akel
container.
Hara.
And he was just chain killing the container.
Yeah. Yeah. So you couldn't turn in your VT keys.
And then luckily a couple hours into that, we got a GM response.
Yeah. GM showed up for that one.
Which, you know, like, it's cool that they responded sometimes, but you know, it still feels shitty that it's like an RNG, you know, like whether or not someone's going to do something and whether or not someone's going to understand what's going on because their CS team is outsourced.
And just like knowing that if it was after 5 p.m. Pacific time, you had no recourse.
Yeah.
You're not going to help. And like, when do you raid? Not 5 p.m. Pacific. So it's like, if you're doing normal raids, like every time we went to an open world raid, we were getting trained. Yeah. And for the first 48 hours, everyone leveling up was getting trained. And that was not the experience for the other side. They were probably like, wow, these guys don't train at all. You know what I mean? I remember we had Yerm on here and we talked about it briefly on the very first episode of DramaQuest. Yerm's like, yeah, you know, we didn't really experience any trains. We were surprised. I was like, yeah, bitch, because we don't play like that. You know what I mean? Like, we experienced quite a lot of trains.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the timeline, we can touch on a couple things that Yerm talked about. But yeah, I mean, I was in the first like real VT clear.
Yeah.
Because other than like the Planet Growth raids, because those were done in the daytime, and I think you had like a 2 a.m. NTOV thing, which I was like, you guys are fucking mental. Like, all y'all that are going, you that are leading, all y'all that are going, you're all idiots. Like, no one wants to do NTOV. No one wants to do NTOV at like 2 a.m. But in Planet Growth for the foaming raids, that's all my deep time that, you know, I basically spend either 4 or 8 hour blocks AoEing in the deep.
Yeah.
And then, but outside of that, like all my characters, all Gorge characters, we were all AA'd and geared, and like we had chrono to burn because I had made probably, I don't know, I made probably like 80 chrono, which coming from Agnarr as my first TLP, 80 chrono was a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
how humble that was back then.
Yeah. I mean, I had on Agnarr, I had bought 2 chrono off Daybreak to buy a Mithril 2-hander, which lasted me until my epic. And then, but yeah, on Selo, I was up to like 80 chrono. It was me, Barry, he was Genos in TF.
Yeah.
And Chosen. Chosen was like my bro. Those were like the trio in the deep, because Chosen had a wizard enchanter. Barry was a cleric, and he had a Clashnar, his buddy, had a enchanter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just pulling and having a bard. And so we were all geared and aid and stuff. So, and we were present for like I was the, you know, number 1 or number 2 person on the shard DKP. So they just gave me a shard. And because I was like the only paladin. So
yeah.
I get defaulted everything.
What was it like in the weeks after that? Because I pretty much fell off the face of the earth until I came back when you guys were in GOD, I think. So for like 2 or 3 months. Let's
see. I have a couple notes. We still bat phone stuff. We like bat phone curse cycle. And it was funny because so this curse cycle, Ansel bat phoned. And we had me and Gorgia decided to go because we weren't doing anything. So we went, and there was a dude, Papa Rob, from Papa Rob's show on there.
Yeah.
And
he was a big streamer, right? Maybe not
yeah,
big, but he was a streamer.
yeah, and he had a family guild on Agnarr. Um, we'll get to more of him in a second.
Okay.
But he like we went to that bat phone, and that was where actually that was where I ran into Yerm for the first time because he thought I was Frankie Sussy,
Mm,
and I was trading all the clerics and rangers, just trading them like copper or plat,
right.
just to
Yeah.
change their target. And Yerm got upset at me because he thought I was sussy. He's like, "Why would you do this? Like, I thought we were friends, kind of thing." And I was like, "Bro, I don't even know you." He's like, "What do
Mm,
you mean? I watch your stream all the time." I used to stream Eve, and I was like, "There's no way, there's no fucking way you watched me stream Eve like years ago." So
yeah.
I'm so confused. But so Papa Rob at that first cursed thing that we went to keeps saying how he was the first person at the bat phone because he was leveling down there. Ansel's trying to gather up the troops and like organize everyone, and Papa Rob will keep mentioning how he was the first one there. And eventually, Ansel's just like, "Shut the fuck up! I get it." Um, which is funny to hear because Papa Rob was the only person ever booted from What the Guck in the history of
Really?
the guild.
Wow.
The only person ever removed, and he was removed because we had told him to hide guild and raid chat on stream
Hmm.
because we didn't want like for me that is opt in information. Like if someone wants to opt in to be on your stream, that's fine,
Right.
but like don't put like give everyone the option.
Right.
And so he threw a fit on this is back on Agnar, threw a fit, and during a VT clear, he streamed with no cam, no mic, no UI. He was just like F11, just doing nothing.
Yeah.
And then he eventually started typing to someone in tells, and the tells were cut off to where you couldn't see what they were typing,
Hmm.
but you could see what he was typing. And he said he deserves his clapping child.
Oh. Oh
Yes.
man.
So
That's really gross.
And so, for context, I have a son who has autism, and anyone who's raided with us has heard him clapping in the background, basically nonstop. And that's why we are recording this in daytime while he's at school.
Yep.
Because if he was home, it would be a nonstop noise. Which the guilds I've been in have grown to either. I mean, it's just something that people get used to.
It's just reality for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And Frank
so
was a raid leader in Faceless. You know what I mean? A very effective raid leader despite that.
so yeah, he said that, and even then, I was like, do I guild remove him? Is this too personal? Like, am I too close to the issue? But yeah, we eventually guild removed him because I mean, all the other officers were like, bro, I would have G kicked him immediately. Like, what are you? I was like, I just felt like I was too close to the issue.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, obviously, I don't like when people make fun of me, but I feel like it would be corrupt for me to take action because it's me. Right. Yeah. I totally feel you there.
I've made myself a target.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so first time, first dude ever kicked on Agnarr, and then on Selo, Ansel tells him to shut the fuck up. And I was like, oh, so this is good.
Who cares if you're the first person at a bat phone? Who in the
Right,
world?
like, and why do you have to keep reminding us? Like, no one cares. Like, anyways.
We get it. It's your first bat phone. Okay. Calm down.
Yeah, so I just, I mean, obviously I want to put him on blast because that's just what I do.
Right.
And, I mean, and, people over the course of time, over the course of Selo and now Bird Hawks, have made references to my kid, which like it doesn't bother me as in like the sense of like I feel I get like how could you do that? I'm just like I feel bad that like you don't recognize that like this is an in-game thing. We have an issue in game, or you have an issue with me personally, and your way of dealing with it is to bring my son into this. Like, that's a weird.
It's really gross.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just and so like someone you've had on this podcast has tried to bring my son into this.
Interesting.
Um, which I can send you the
Yeah.
thing. And
My
luckily,
brain is so broken I can't remember everyone who's been on the podcast, and I've only had like 20 episodes.
yeah. Also, in a rare FOH, because it was an FOH post,
Mhm.
in a rare FOH way, everyone responded to that person defending me.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, whoa, because I don't have an FOH account.
Mhm.
I just like got linked this. And I was like, oh, that's sad. That's pathetic of them, like, to need to bring my disabled son into this, like, but like Yerm was the first to defend me, and like a bunch of other people were like, yeah, like we've heard him playing with his son, like between raid fights and shit, and so
Yeah. I think I know who it is now. I think I've thought about it. I didn't have to think far back. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. Some people are so immersed, and I'm one of those people. You know what I mean? That like when you're fully immersed, the divide between the game and the real world just it becomes very porous.
Yeah.
And it becomes like your real life, and this is what matters to you. And people who oppose you and who attack you in game, it's just like they're attacking you in real life. Just to some people,
Right.
I've certainly had times where I felt that way, and you have to try to like you have to recognize when you're getting that way and try to move away from it because it's not healthy. But yeah, I mean,
and one of the big things was I had the same personality when I streamed Eve. I did a lot of PvP in Eve.
Yeah.
And I would smack talk whoever, like whatever guy I was fighting, I would be smack talking him. But like I went to like an Eve Vegas, which is like a fanfare thing.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of these people who we fought, and like we talked shit to each other, and like we drank at the fanfare. It was like it's all in-game shit. Like
Right.
So that kind of thing is cool to be like, we both know it's an in-game thing. It's just competition.
I find that streaming actually like really humanizes you. Like people that had for years kind of hated me in EverQuest, and we were on real bad terms. After I was streaming a lot on Eridoon, when I was not a guild leader of anything, all I did was stream like fucking level 5 content in Blackborough. People were like, "Oh, dude, you're actually pretty cool." You know what I mean? You see the human side of people, and they're not just like some pixel that attacks your guild or whatever.
Yeah.
And I try to understand that about the people I compete with too. Like these other guild leaders that I hate are a lot of them are trying to just represent their guild, and they feel like certain expectations. Now, every now and then you run into like real scumbags, right?
Like Grisvok.
Like Grisvok. A small number of other people who a lot of times I don't even like to name those people because I think it kind of like they probably get off on that. You know what I mean?
That's true. Probably.
I got a list of like 5 people who I think are genuinely like bad people that I won't be in a guild with. I won't interact with. And it's all it's all based on like integrity kind of thing, never performance kind of thing. I'll play with like terrible players every server,
Didn't you do that just recently?
Play with terrible players. I'm a terrible player, so like it's
on the launch static.
The launch. Oh god, dude. Oh, giving me PTSD, dude. I'll never live it down, man. People bring it up to me still, like about how I got crushed on Okuin launch. Like, yes, I get it, dude. Next time, I'm gonna play the Enchanter.
Oh my god, it was the best. I mean, it made for great content.
Yeah, it's weird because like, it was me, Reese, and Ansel were the other people. Like Reese and Ansel are the dudes who are 100% on every time they play. You know what I mean? They don't have bad days for the most part.
Until one of them goes skiing.
Well, yeah, he like will vanish, but I can't. Who the fuck am I to say anything about someone just fading away, right?
Yeah,
like,
true.
Yeah, I'm like the ultimate flake, but like when they're on, they're just playing like top. Reese and Ansel are so talented and reliable, and sadly, they were playing the classes that you don't need to be reliable.
Because they were basically tired of having to always be on, like
yeah. Yeah. But so what was it like? How much was my reputation damaged with you guys after the launch before I ever came back or anything? Like, what did
Um,
you guys feel about what I had, my performance or whatever?
no, I think the leadership made it very clear it wasn't on you. It wasn't like a and then I think I don't remember if it was Seeger, but someone it might have been, but like made it clear that you were only there for the launch. You and a couple other people were only there for the launch.
Yeah. People,
Which
it always bothered me a lot when people said I bailed on the guild because we lost, because I was always really upfront about the fact that I couldn't be there.
right,
Yeah.
and I think on its own that like for my mentality is like, oh, why would you roll on a server for like 5 days or something like that?
Yeah.
Because like again, going back to the competition, like I don't, I wouldn't do that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why would someone do that?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, he just wants to race. Like he doesn't care about like the guild as a whole. The marathon. He just wants to sprint.
Hmm.
I
mean, that's the part I want to participate in, but I care deeply, deeply for all the Faceless guilds, even the ones that don't like me, which is, I think, all of them now. But yeah, I mean, I super like every time I'm always asking you and Seeger around expansion time, like, hey, are you guys gonna, how are you doing, son? Like, are you guys gonna beat so and so this time? I root for you guys so hard. I just know, it's not me. It's not what I have in me. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, you did a good 2 years on Mischief.
I did my best.
It's funny because 2 years was the lifeline of Selo, was the exact duration of Selo. And honestly, like by the end of it, like all of us were fucking like we're exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had it's a different experience for you guys because of the content speed. It was brutal on you. You know what I mean? But also, what I would say is, imagine the guild that you guys had in Pop, the size and how many idiots there were. I had that guild
3
for 2
time
years.
splits.
Yeah, I had that size of guild to deal with for 2 years.
Yeah.
So there was. I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but there was unique challenges to both guilds.
And that's something we, like me, Gorgon, Seeger have always talked about, like because people like, especially the people that were in OGC that joined Selo, like to compare Dima and Seeger.
Yeah,
and I'm like, and Seeger's always, Seeger was always like, I don't have any qualms with Dima. Like it's a very different skill set to run a guild for 6 years on normal lockouts versus to run a Selo guild.
Right.
Like the Selo speed and like it's 2 years versus 6, but it's for those 2 years we rated 82% of all days.
Yeah. It's insane.
That excludes the Luckland part because our DKP
was reset
at Pop.
Yeah.
So like, how many days in Luckland did you raid? Like basically every day?
Every single day, for sure. Every single day.
So like, that would skew the numbers up to probably like 84, 85. But like,
as far you can't have other hobbies. Like it has to be your life. And when you're not raiding, you're planning the next raid.
Yeah. I mean, like, and like, I don't know what went on with everyone else, but I had a long discussion with my girlfriend that this was something I really wanted to do. So we made it work. Sometimes it was challenging because like, I'm raiding and I need to be cooking dinner and, but yeah, I mean, it's just different. Like, I don't think comparing them, it's like comparing a guild it's like comparing Finny to like, like a Ragefire guild. Like, why do you,
right?
Two entirely different things.
I definitely felt like I had earned a reputation for like being unreliable as far as the duration goes. You know what I mean? And I wanted to use Mischief as an opportunity to just, at some point I made the decision to do that. Because remember, when Mischief came out, I partnered with Crim The reason I partnered with Krim was so I could play for 2 weeks and then have someone else to lead the guild when I inevitably quit.
Right.
At a certain point, when I decided to make the Faceless on there and split off, I was like, this is my chance to like prove that I'm not just going to flake all the time, every time. You know what I mean? And it was actually like you guys, you and Seeger and the Cello crew. I don't know if I was successful in it, but it was important to me. It was something was one of my goals, was to show you guys, you know what I mean, to try to earn some of that respect, I guess. To show you guys like, hey, it's not just like I'm here to pump a guild and then bounce. I'm not just trying to be the hype man, Gorgasm. But my problem, and probably a problem a lot of EQ players have is I just cannot keep my fucking life in order. You know what I mean? When I'm leading a guild, if I'm not leading a guild, the game gets very boring because it's just auto attack quest. And if I am leading a guild, I just have to put like 1,000% into it, to the detriment of everything else in my whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I can't find that balance.
We're in like TBS and you have spies. I'm like, bro, we're in fucking Solteris. Like, there's no mystery here. Everyone's gonna do the same flagging quest, and you're like, man, they're just gonna. I'm like, bro, like, just be faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like I check with the officers from the Mischief Guild, and I'm like, how's Guild XYZ doing? Like, I don't ask how our guild's doing. I know our guild is fucking good. I want to know what. Give me the spy details now, please. Let's get the update. Do you need me to log in and take care of this? Or no, I'm like, yeah, I was like all in, and I worried about competition 24/7, and like, yeah, I have like an unhealthy mindset with it where I just can't turn myself off of that. But back to Cello.
Yeah, back to
you guys made it through Luckland. You reset the DKP probably because we gave too much DKP with the Luckland shards and shit, right? You had to repair that system.
Yeah.
Now you guys we
moved away from the fixed price DKP. If you remember, we had Foaming. I don't know if there are other people, went through every item in Luckland and gave it a DKP price. It was like tier 1 was 33, tier 2 was like 25, and it was like 5 different prices, and there was no bidding. There was like, if this item drops, you pay this amount if you win it. And that was a way to make it fair for the people that were getting funnel gear, which was like benefit to me, because I was like, hey, I'm not in the first 40, so I got all this DKP to bank. Mm-hmm. Whereas like Barry is like, fuck, I have to take this shitty Greek BP because it's what dropped, and I have to pay 25 DKP for it.
Right.
Fuck,
I guess one of the big things that Cello had to logistically grapple with DKP is people who hoard DKP on Cello fuck the whole guild over, right?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, touching kind of a little bit on the race, like you touched on the top 40 being named by Amtrak, and the pro and con, goes back to the pro and con of not choosing the top 40. Because if you choose the top 40, you can funnel them gear and everyone just knows that that's the deal. But if you're trying to maintain a guild afterwards, then you can't have all these people geared and like just earning DKP at the same rate. So
right, that they don't need because they're already stacked.
Right. So like you make them go negative, force them to take gear, make them go negative, and you're like, hey, your reward for going negative is you get to be in the first 40 kind of thing.
Right. And now they didn't do it. They had no safeguards, and they had a whole bunch of DKP kind of corruption shit that came out with Grisvok, right?
Yeah, in Pop especially was the first big first Exodus since the launch.
Oh, really quick. Right after the big drama with the N-word and all that stuff that came out about Grisvok, Mabu met with us and kind of committed for his crew to come over to us, right?
I wasn't part of that.
Well, that's why we picked up Chizvin and Rumslug in Luckland.
Oh, okay. Holy Forge.
Yes, Swinegg,
yeah.
Yeah, we got some of his guys, and yeah. I think it's kind of commendable that he was like, yeah, we don't want to play with this type of person. One of the only people, that clique was the only clique that was like, yeah, we're not cool basically playing with a guild leader who uses like racist language 24/7. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they stayed with the guild to finish the race because they felt like they had a duty to do that, which I could see it, right? But then they
Right.
came over, even though we were the losing team, it came over and joined us.
Yeah. And Rumslow stayed all the way until just shy of like TBL.
Yeah.
Chisvin, I think, left when Krim left. Yeah. And then Swinnig didn't last very long.
No, yeah. Swinnig went back to those guys. Remember the
Yeah.
Legend of Boss Stop?
Yeah.
Because Swinnig was mass recruiting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that yeah, Krieg and Bostop and God.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Tell me,
Pop.
It's a Pop launch. Tell me how the whole Pop experience went. You guys were fat at that time, huge still.
Yeah. We had I mean, we had something like 250-ish raiders, something like that. 200, 250-ish. And the way they decided, I was an officer at this time, the way they decided Pop launch was going to work is we're going to have one 72-man raid, and it's you guys are going to submit applications, be like, hey, I'm available at these times, this class, whatever, but like I'm available at these times, and you commit 100% that you're going to be on until Quorum dies, basically, outside of like structured breaks. And our schedule was always posted ahead of time. Like we were never racing after Luckland. We were never racing. We always went at like Quorum died for us day 2 or whatever. Like It was always like, hey, we're gonna do all the prep work, and then we're gonna go to sleep. We'll wake up next day and finish. So 72 people sign up, and so we get ready to do pop flagging. And we have I think Junior is leading the second raid of like people who are like at normal raid time. They're going to go through normal pop flagging in the DZs.
Yeah.
And so, we do all the normal stuff like Carpin, Drummus, whatever. We had to play as Storms. And I think Urim touched on this.
Yes. We're talking about the GM corruption piece here, right?
So we get into play as Storms, which, again, during this time, there was no, it was different than it is now. I think now it's much easier.
Now it's like zone-wide drops the first month. It was just a historic bottleneck at the time.
Yeah, it's probably the bottleneck besides getting 2 Carpin cycles. Like, Storms was it. And we zone in, and we're like, all right, get ready. Like, we're gonna try to make 2 or 3 picks, and we're just going to compete. We'll track because I made a spreadsheet on Agnarr which had their spawn things, and I just used that. And I was like, okay, we need to track picks being up. We zone in, and there's like fucking 10 picks up, and we're like, and they all have exactly like 30 people or whatever the threshold is, and we're like, what the fuck is going on? Like. And so we pick around, and there's no one. There's like Amtrak's in like 3 picks or something like that. And we're like, oh, like they opened up all these picks.
Yeah.
And so, obviously they say that a GM did it. And I mean, a GM has never done that before or since.
GM just wouldn't know. They wouldn't have the knowledge, right?
And like, it wouldn't be opened in the way that it would register. It just, none of that makes sense. And it's all like,
you think it was Niente, right?
No, I think it was. So there's Gorgasm that we talked about was a very prolific cheater way back in the day. And he said there was like plugins he used to use that did stuff like this. Like he used to do Anguish and not get lockouts.
Okay, so you think that they had an MQer who was able to mass spawn picks?
Because the same thing happened when a certain group of Amtrak would be in the deep, is that there would be multiple picks open with the exact threshold. And I'm like,
oh, dude, what was that guy from Amtrak who would come to the zone you were in and lag the zone out so you couldn't get kills?
Oh,
dude, I forgot that shit was happening.
Was that Toxin?
Yeah, Toxin. Holy shit. Remember Toxin would do
Zlandicar.
that? Zlandicar, yeah. So just imagine this when we talk about cheating and competition. People are probably like, oh, you guys did dirty tricks too. Dude, there was a guy who would, when he saw you killing a raid mob, would use MacroQuest to lag the zone out and shut it down so you would wipe, and then he would warp over and kill it.
Yeah.
Imagine you have a raid mob at like 1% and someone wipes you with
Someone just crashed
zone
the
lag.
zone.
Yeah, they just crash the zone. Yeah.
And then you come back and they've already killed it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I completely forgot about that Islamic car.
Yeah.
And so you said lag and zone out. But so there's obviously a disparity in the cheating involved.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Amtrak can defend to the moon that a GM came through. And what I will say is if a GM did make these, they made them at the behest of Amtrak. Like they didn't make it for like the good of everybody.
Right.
Amtrak was like, do this, or if they had a GM in their guild, you know.
What makes you think that Amtrak knew ahead of time?
I mean, they were in there like long before us. They were in there with small groups, which I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would go there without a force. Like, I mean, I guess you could send small groups there to kind of hold the corpses, but like you need flagged people with the medallions.
Yeah,
like,
I think Yerm eventually said, maybe he said it on FOH or he said it in voice one time. I kind of felt like Yerm indicated like, oh yeah, I could talk about that Storms thing one day, and I don't know if I ever circled back with him about it, but my conversation with him or wherever that happened made me think that yeah, like they knew, but I never, I wasn't there, so I never delved into it.
Yeah, I mean, and we didn't have a lot of, if any, like actual like really good spies in Amtrak, mainly from lack of caring, and so, but Storms being the bottleneck, having 10 picks open, made Storms a lot less contested. We also had like the triple their size, 4 times their size of a guild.
Yeah.
So we took the majority of picks, and then we sent basically wherever they had +1 group into the picks they were in.
Yeah.
And
now, do you think if you had decided to race hardcore, you guys could have won, or probably not?
I mean, the numbers probably are there. I mean, it requires a lot more. The thing is, it would require a lot more planning. Pop, you're kind of like, Pop is kind of a known, right? Like everything you have to kill.
Yeah.
One thing in GOD is we ended up doing a quest that we didn't have to do for flagging.
Oh, yeah, in the sewers or some shit, right?
In Cod-Taz, the north part of Cod-Taz.
Going to that pit. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And we didn't know, we did all that.
Yeah.
For both raids.
Yeah. Yeah, all that shit could be skipped. That it could be really fast.
Yeah. So Pop maybe, but like GOD, we would have probably lost just by not knowing that and not having like, we weren't going to practice on tests like to clear Ixta or the Ikens trials or whatever.
What was the drama like in Pop basically Pop to DODH launch? Was there still drama, and what was it like?
Well, Pop, the biggest issue was the Griswold tracking DKP. That was like,
it's always fucking tracking DKP, dude.
Dude, that was probably the biggest drama besides Storms, because Amtrak was like, it wasn't us. We're like, okay, sure. The biggest thing was when Griswold was about to lose on an item that like a big item in Pop. I don't remember what it was. He awarded himself a bunch of tracking DKP because he had AFK, people in the safe room of water and stuff like that. He awarded himself DKP and then he won the item because he had more DKP.
Yeah,
and people
it's especially
like,
shitty when everyone knows that you're just using like showy cube mail bots or MacroQuest to track. Like you're not actually tracking anything.
Right. Like anyone could have done that. You were just the person that did it because you were in leadership. Like, and you cared. And that created a lot of issues because people left. I mean, people just straight left over that. People were like, it's kind of funny because the N word wasn't the breaking point. Stealing DKP was the breaking point,
Right.
which sounds ridiculous when you say it, but people can be like, "Oh, the N word doesn't really affect me because I'm a fucking white cis male. Like, why do I care if someone calls me the N word?"
Right.
I'm assuming that's how people write it off. I don't.
I would I think people with the way they justify it in their heads, normie people who would like not tolerate it in real life, they say, well, like, it's the internet and he didn't really mean it that way. It was just sort of the same as calling someone a cuck. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, the thing is, you just have to draw a line somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not there, where is it?
Right. So, but yeah, there was a lot of drama. People left Amtrak over that. And then I don't know if it was then or in GOD, we gave him a character on our DKP site. They had like 15,000 DKP.
Nice.
And it was tracking DKP.
Yeah.
So that was a little nice little thing.
Now you started beating them in certain metrics, though, in like mid pop, right? Like clearing time more than them, doing better splits and stuff.
I mean, you're right. Like just in sheer incoming gear, we always had it. And then any bat phone, any elemental bat phone we had, we didn't even like really bat phone it. We're just like, whoever's on, we have enough people EXPing and fire right now that we'll just kill Magmaton.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, everyone take this raid invite. We'll just kill it real quick, and then we'll go back to EXP.
Yeah. So you would say their guild health was declining rapidly?
Yeah, and their narrative was always that they were a smaller guild with a more geared core,
mm-hmm.
and which we didn't really challenge. We didn't really care to challenge it, but we didn't challenge it until GOD.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of got old of them parodying the same thing. And we're like, are they really? And so we ended up going through and like in GOD, the big things was goats, right? We were goat socking.
Yeah. I remember I came back and I was there for GOD, not launch, but like the week after, I think.
Yeah.
And it was so fun.
Yeah. So GOD launch, again, planned over 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
We had a team A, team B. Right, team A was like the hardcore people. We're gonna do team A. We're gonna clear the second day, and then team B is gonna be people who don't want to commit to like going hard on opening day.
Didn't Frankie have like a legendary stream of trying to do tipped on opening day?
Yeah.
I've heard.
Well, he also had a legendary Eldon stream where he failed a normal Eldon.
Yeah,
90 minutes normal Eldon. The shaman in his group kept casting torpor on him, and he was their only DPS. So his attack speed slowed.
Nice.
And they just run out of time. So, yeah. Again, we're not warping through tipped, and 2, we're not doing test runs of tipped.
Right.
So, again, we're not racing. We're just going. We want to go at a fast pace, to get stuff on farm, to get it on lockout so that we can get the lockouts rolling. Because we have the way it works for Daybreak is that even though they say 1 month, it's either 4 weeks or 5 weeks because it was it was always a Wednesday release at the time. Now it's Thursdays, but
did Eldon and LOY count? Did Eldon give you a month? So you basically had 2 months of pop?
I think Eldon gave us a month.
Yeah.
LOY doesn't.
Yeah, okay.
LOY is the GOAT expansion. I just gotta say.
And Luckland was actually 6 weeks, right?
Yeah. Luckland was the only thing that broke out of that 4 or 5 week paradigm.
Yeah, basically, give you like a 2 week level up period.
Yeah, which I mean, I think was a great design. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, like, me not being big on race doesn't take away from the Selo at a design part was really fun. Like starting in Luckland, having such a diverse zones to choose from, like having summon plate gear, focus effects are in use, like so wizards aren't fucking useless.
We need a Cello 2.0 this May.
Side note, I don't know if you saw this. There was a submission for the 2050 TLP that that Lutheran did, and it's Mischief, Selo, and then a bunch of other nice rule sets.
The problem is when Lutheran submits things, it's guaranteed loss. So he screwed us all.
But they came back and said they already have a rule set in mind.
Wow. Okay.
Which that was as of a week ago, which is pretty. It's pretty. I would have bet my bank account that they had no idea.
That's what I would have said. That is very intriguing that they've already decided.
Yeah. So I hope this company has a history of not announcing things until April or whatever. I really hope they announce it sooner just so they can get some feedback on it. But
rather than scrambling the week before it comes out to fix it.
Yeah, and like Airdune's Agnarr pop launch thing, they had to remove Airdune Arizona being pop locked.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I mean, Mangler got totally changed. Cello was changed.
Yeah.
Oakland was changed.
Yeah. So, anyways.
Yeah.
So, GOD, we do launch. There's a little bit of conflict for like the open world stuff, like Kotaz stuff and Quivik. And you know what sucked about GOD is that every fucking Sino spawned when like they were forming up for Sivu or Takfi or they had just finished. Like every single Cynosure.
We never got a single Sino, right?
Single open world Cynosure.
Yeah.
I was like, how does this keep happening? Like we're both forming up for Takfi. We zone in, engage Zarek, Cynosure spawned. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
So that was pretty frustrating.
Yo, do you remember that DPS race with Red Guides, Amtrak teaming up against us on Zoo?
Yeah, because I was friends with the Red Guides, a couple of them. I would chat with them. So
that was so much fun.
So the so Zoo spawns and we have small goat socks going on. So of course they bat phone because it's mandatory, and we goat sock we bat phone because it's fun.
But we don't have a real bat phone. We don't give DKP for any of this.
No, nothing. Everything's all optional.
Yeah, it was called a goat phone, and people could opt into it, and you get a ping, and you would roll on loot, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
so it's like their main guild versus our auxiliary force.
Right. It's just like who wants to have fun and do this for no DKP, just a chance to roll on loot.
Yeah.
Versus like they're like harassing members who are not awake at 2 a.m.
Oh, dude. Remember their chat logs that we would get? Like, if you see your name in this, it's your fucking fault we lost.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So the Zoo, the contested Zoo, we're pinging Gorg because Gorg's 12 box at the time. I posted pictures of his setup on Discord with like the rack of laptops, and he's got a bunch of Rangers. He's got his warrior who's decked out. All this stuff, and so we're pinging him, and like. So they're trying to pull. He's logging in, heading over, trying to run fucking 12 people. He's not macro questing, so it's like auto follow, fucking clicking through.
He got there like 80% into the fight, right? Or like 20% of her health was gone.
Well, we're trying to we're chain resetting Zoo. Like I keep dropping him aggro and pulling him out, and like finally
fighting her right by the staircase there.
Yeah, like right by the Sivu AOC.
Yeah.
And so finally Gore gets there and just, we go all out and we won, thankfully. I'm pretty sure that's the one I have a video recording of Cyrix training us.
Yeah, Cyrix and QP trained us and got suspended.
Cyrix, I submitted the one for Cyrix because I ran out to intercept his train. I healed him. I hand-pied the group to get aggro, and then I just ran it all the way to Kotaz.
Nice.
Which, by the way, note, that's what a paladin does. You don't help with a DPS race.
Right. Don't hit the mob for 20 damage.
Yeah. You open trades and you derail trains. That's your only use. Like me opening trade for 10 seconds with a ranger is more DPS impact than me auto attacking.
That could be a t-shirt. Open trades, derail trains.
Yeah, that's it. So, and there was, they would trade us for like fucking Sivu, Aniux, and goats. And
all the time. I remember my first night back, we did some goat phones, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then we tried to do an Anuk, and Griswold showed up at like 3 a.m. for some shit or a nook. And I remember seeing and shout, "You should have stayed on the boat, Zaide." This fucking guy.
And they were eating like, I mean, Griswold had to roll up alt accounts to get the Quivet flag because he kept eating suspensions.
Yep.
And then he wouldn't. And then I think it was impacting their raids because like they wouldn't have certain characters on for deep splits.
Yeah. Do you remember we did that one? We started winning like every time we would really show up, we would win.
Yeah.
And we had ACM pop in Tixivu at the same time there was a goat up, and we were gonna go hit the ACM, but for some reason we went to the goat first. We like juked it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Amtrak came back, but she was active, so she's shitting out the Craglings.
Man,
and
that was hectic.
We're fighting the goat DPS racing. You can't feign death because you'll lose your DPS. Yeah. And all these little Craglings from her encounter are in the room. And Hampshire AoE taunts and tries to train it around the room and like just immediately gets blitzed. We win the goat, and then we win ACM right after that too. Oh, yeah. God, there was some of the best times.
There was a lot of, I mean, there was one, amazing moment. So you mentioned the Griswold screenshot of if your name is on this list, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You're the if your name is the bottom, you're the problem.
Yeah.
That fight. So we were two forces. They're at the zone in, we're at the hill.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting. And we pull in a name. It's not even a named drops loot. It's the alt access mob. That's in like the northern Quivik. That no one goes to. It's just
drops
for
like
alt
some weird,
access.
like ring key thing.
It's just alt access to Quivik. Like,
yeah.
So we pull him in, and he immediately harm touches it, and we're like, "Oh my god,
what a scrub!"
He fucking harm touched a trash mob, basically. Yeah. And then 10, 15 minutes later, one of the goats spawns, and I mean, we just crushed them. And that's when he posted, and we're just like, bro, you're part of the problem. Like, you harm touched. And now that I think about it, if he was running MQ, he was probably had the if target named harm touch like in his KA. Like,
right. And because it technically is a named mob, it just
Oh my god. I didn't think about the KA part until just now. But
I don't know. Being dead serious here, I actually don't know what the KA means.
Oh, Kiss Assist is the INI that like macro quest
he just had it in an automated file script there.
Yeah, it's if DPS like
I know what Kiss Assist is. I wasn't tracking. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and I'm sure he was definitely using Kiss Assist. So,
but yeah,
imagine playing one character and running Kiss Assist on it. What are you even doing? He
had a shaman, but like
two characters.
SK shaman. And the thing that always got me was like he was not a good SK. Like we had the goat that was in the southern temple spawn, and they're trying to pull it out, and he's like jumping on top of the thing trying to pet pull it, and then we ended up one of our monks, Gurin, goes in, pulls it all the way out, basically solo, and then Griswold jumps off the temple and runs after it and aggroes everything that else is that like pathing back into the temple and just trains both our forces, and we're just like, what are you doing?
And that Quivik trash is no joke.
Yeah, and it's just silly. Like he's not. Yeah. We had a lot of cool races. We had one ACM where they were gonna win because QP was bowing ACM for like
a long time, right?
And we're like, fuck, like they're just racking up damage. How do we get him off the threat list? And so she starts, they're dealing with the ads, and one of our bards ends up high sunning one of the Craglings, and aggroes the Mastrooks, and then it just turns into a whole cluster.
Yeah, you got to turn it into a shit show.
Yeah, I think they ended up winning overall, but it was still like fun to like think of ways like how do we cause chaos if we're losing.
And I think we never got a Zun open world in Era, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
I don't think we ever tried. Like it was just because what do we need a Zun for? Like we're doing like 12 splits of fucking
TAC
the
fee.
TAC fee, like the two easy Zuns.
Yeah.
One notable race, and is we lost, but it was a great story. Is they outnumbered us for a cav,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was like ray leading that one because no other officers were on, so I was like the only vocal person,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, we're gonna lose this. They have more DPS here. They have like 2 extra groups. And I'm like, how do we win this? And I'm like, we just gotta take them by surprise. So they pulled a couple mobs. We pulled a couple extra mobs, feigned them. So they have to deal with like 4 mobs, 5 mobs. And then I was just like, just go. We just run in and just fucking everyone blows FDF and speed focus, and we're just crushing it. And this thing's melting. It's down to like 15%. And then suddenly in Discord, everyone's freaking out. A bunch of the monks are freaking out. And Junior on his druid, Duana, has hit evac on accident in a DPS group. And he's like, oh, fuck. And so all those monks' DPSs are wiped, right? Because they're zoned. And so we see the mob, like, Ikav is dropping and then slowly regenning. And we're just like, gave it our best. And and to Junior's credit, he took Force Mod. He's like, I fucked up. You guys can make fun of me as long as you want. I know it was all my fault. I'm sorry. I fucked up.
There's also,
which is all you can do in that situation. Like,
you always hear about that kind of thing. Every server it happens to at least one group, right? There was also a big meta game that happened all the time in Quivik and Tixivu of like, do I blow 7 on this mob? You know what I mean? Like, disc management was real because mobs were spawning like every hour almost, it felt like. And like, you're like, we could win this mob clean if we all blow 7, but then we're going to lose the next 3 mobs probably. You know what I mean? And I remember watching the parse and being like, oh, this guy blew 7. Like,
Yeah. And this was the era before everyone had 7th. It was only the accounts that had the appropriate age, because my paladin didn't have 7th, which doesn't matter. But I ended up rolling a monk on my live account. Yeah. Like from the original one we talked about, because that had 7th. I rolled a monk on that account strictly to get 7th.
Yeah, you almost kind of sucked if you didn't have intensity available on a DPS character.
It was a huge DPS difference if you 7th versus didn't, especially on like a 30-second fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, so GOD happens, goat sock happens. We evaluate how many goats they've gotten versus how many goats we've gotten, and we're like, there's no fucking way they're better geared. Like, we have dominated the goats, because not only have like they never gotten a goat in a pick because they never bring a large enough force to pop a pick, but like, and when we show up on, like, we have people that are between doing their breaking and communication, they're just chilling in Quivik. Like, if a goat spawns, they'll answer it, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so we have like 30, 40 people just hanging out, bullshitting in Discord. Some of the most fun. This is, and so we're getting the majority. We're camping the picks. All that to say, this is also where my conflict with you started, because you are very much a raid leader person. Right?
Yeah.
And I was not used to someone else in that goat phone being vocal.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would just kind of like, I don't wait for people to make a call,
Yeah.
Yeah. So did I overstep? Like, what did I do? Was there a specific time?
It was more the narrative in my mind was you left after Luckland, right?
Yeah.
You left and you came back on GOD and you want to just run shit. When you haven't put in all this time to get to know these people, kind of thing. And that was like the narrative.
Yeah.
And knowing you now, it's just like, you want to win. I get it. You know. There was one.
For what it's worth, I always thought you were a fine raid leader too. So you know what I mean? I was never like, oh, I got to do this because Frank sucks.
And I appreciate that. And the one other big DPS race was the 3-way arena. There was an arena fight where it was us, Amtrak, and Addictions. There was like 300 people in Sivu.
Yeah.
because we had just finished
A DZ or something.
TACFI.
Yeah.
We had us and Addictions. I think had just finished TACFI, and like Amtrak was already there, and so it was insane. Like there was so much lag.
Yeah.
And like I think Seeger told the story of like he casted maybe 2 heals and the mob was dead. Like there was so much lag. That was it. And I think we won because we had a 72-man raid.
Yeah, already formed and everything.
But that was like the craziest. Like seeing 300 people in Cebu was like in those tight hallway. Like how do you move?
Yeah. You try to like click the door and it won't open.
Nothing.
Yeah. All those like doors that vertical pop.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened. I don't remember doing Omens at all with you guys. I feel like I came back in DON again and stayed until POR when I quit after the POR server firsts.
Yeah, I don't remember you in Omens. But that that could also right, because Omens was when like I think you had to take care of some stuff. You had to do something for your deployment.
Yeah. I mean, I was based in Japan still. So even like normal raid times were like fucking 7 or 8 a.m. for me all the time. It was real shitty. I don't remember a single thing of Omens. I remember partying all the time. GoPhone was the best thing in the world when I lived in Japan because like that was when you needed people the most. And it was prime time for me. Like 8 p.m. I could actually contribute.
Yeah, it was like 2 a.m. or some shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Japan is exactly 12 hours behind US Eastern. And then during like daylight savings, it's 13 hours behind. Or 13 hours ahead, sorry.
You know why I know it's a 13-hour time difference?
Why?
Because Taylor Swift has to fly from Tokyo to Super Bowl.
Yeah. My wife is a Swiftie. I have to hear about Taylor Swift all the time.
Bro, it's so good.
Yeah.
Anyways, Omens is in general uneventful.
Yeah, it's kind of a shit expansion. In my opinion, I just don't like it. Like, Anguish is too easy. You blitz through it every time.
Which is crazy because if you would have asked me pre-Selo what my favorite expansion in history was from live, Omens, 100%.
What do you think after doing it on Selo, though? You're like,
one of the worst fucking expansion. There's just for a level cap expansion, it has just nothing to do.
Right. You finish your epic in like 3 days.
I mean, like, it's just, and like even the extracurricular stuff, like if you're not doing English, you're doing MP2 trials, the MP2 trials are awful. Like,
miserable.
The travel is miserable. They've done a little bit to tweak so that your raid doesn't get fucking dispersed across 5 picks.
That was the biggest answer.
Fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And
I like DON a lot. DON is just nice and compact. 2 raids, hit it, quit it, done.
Yeah. And then
and Vish is a great raid.
You can do the other 2 raids. Yeah. Ricky and Kess.
Yeah.
That's DON is actually where I ran into Drillson for the first time because there's a raid boss in open world, a Cursed Nest called Yarlir.
Yeah.
Which I never known about beforehand. And we had done it the first day, I think went back the second day because it's like a 20-hour respawn or something.
Yeah.
And someone else had killed it. And we're like, who else knows about this?
Yeah.
And so I eventually ran into him and we made a Yarlir rotation. So that, because it's such a it's such a nightmare fight if you're not killing it because the 4 ads, if they're not killed, ramp up to like 1 billion damage.
Is that Jarek? Is that who it is? Yarlir is Vishimtar's wife. You fight her as the normal raid boss.
Or sorry.
I know what you're talking about. It's like a Drake, not even a dragon, right?
Yeah. Fuck, what is it? I just know he dropped a Pharaoh earring with haste on it.
Yeah. Anyway, Drillson was always one of the guys you could actually work with on that side of things. He was, and everybody I know respects Drillson. So
yeah. So DON goes off. DON actually we almost get server 3rd because Red Guides has blitzed through progression so fast, which I'm sure wasn't completely legit, but for DON we funneled. Seeger had a faction potion which I think you did for Mischief as well.
Oh yeah.
So we funneled him, and um, luckily Red Guides wiped on Vish because they were doing it with like 8 real people or something. Um, so we do Vish, farm it. I enjoyed DON because with half lockouts, we actually had half lockouts, the fall half lockout shit during Selo in DON.
So you were
So
doing like every 2 days?
I don't think we changed our schedule that much.
You just got a freebie in between the regular rates, maybe?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would, but I would do the group content Circle of Drakes and every day. Like I would wake up in the morning at like 10 a.m. I would be like, hey, who's on? Like grab my click together, do Circle of Drakes. Great way to farm gear. But yeah, DON was pretty uneventful.
Oh, I actually remember right now one of the things that made me have a problem with you early on.
Oh yeah, nice.
I asked if I could join you guys. I saw like the yellow text that you guys were doing Eldons, and I was like, oh, could I get in on that? And you were like, no.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, it's like a little click thing. Like before that, I hadn't really run into like click things because I just didn't, you know what I mean? Like
right.
In the first AOC servers, people weren't really super organized about it. Where like side crews were doing shit. And I was like, oh, I can't come. I can't come. What?
And yeah, I mean, we did a lot of low man stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of it wasn't even for gear. A lot of it was just for fun. But I was really protective over my clique because it was like people, like a curated group of people.
Yeah, like you and Wex and Reese.
And then like Chrysanth, Blue Dream, Zooted.
Yep. Chrysanth and Zooted were both Amtrak dudes too.
People, yeah. That was like they joined post DODH or something, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it had grown, and like we did shit like Leviathan in DODH, which is a completely pointless raid. It dropped shit for gear. We just did it because we could do it, and it was a raid with no write up. Like on Ala, the write up is like wrong.
Right.
So we just did it.
Click the thing to kill it, right?
Yeah, it was like cool to kill it. We killed fucking the fucking rampaging shaking dude in Stone Root. So
yeah.
Nothing. I don't really think anything happens in DON. DODH is like the next big drama thing. You have conflict in Dragonspire or
Celeborn.
Yeah, in Dreadspire Keep you have Celeborn, and Amtrak has just a much better guild for killing Celeborn. They have wizards and they have SKs.
Yeah.
And we don't have either.
This is where Gorgasm had a bad time with me, right? Doing Vul.
Vul.
To be fair, I don't think Vul is a good thing to do with anybody, but yeah.
Yeah, so he
I was trying to race, you know what I mean? I was trying to push as fast as I could through DODH.
Yeah, so we I mean Celeborn works out because we have a large guild and can pop a bunch of picks.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do Vul. Gorg and Dahl do not have a good time with you because they make up like 80% of your split. It's like you, them two, and like one or two other people. And it's like
I was like really high strung about it, I think.
Yeah. And Gorg's wife almost quit. Was like almost like logged out, like fuck it, because she only plays to like play with Gorg basically and like have fun with the guild. She's like, I'm not having fun, I'm just gonna log out.
Yeah.
So Celeborn conflict, the orc axes, all the flagging shit, conflict, but it's just normal racing shit. Yeah. It's not until the end of DODH that becomes the big issue, is that we're prepping for POR.
Mm-hmm.
Seeger goes to, I think Drillson at the time was leading.
Yeah. Drill was the leader. I think Griswock had just quit or something.
Yeah. So Seeger goes to them, goes to Drill. They're like, hey, we don't want a shit show over legendary Berserker Bones. Like, let's work something out. so that everyone on the server can just get fucking keyed and we can move on from this nonsense.
Mhm.
And drill set, like, we're not, no one else is in the bargaining state. Like, we
Right.
have a tremendously large guild. We're still 2 splitting demiplane, and we have fucking like 12 monks a split. Like, and like 10 warriors in each split. We have just a massive guild. And we can tank whatever the fuck you want. Like, so Drillson Amtrak counters with some ridiculous offer of like they'll control the raid window and
Sus.
one no go, but like why would we put our trust in you? Like, you've done nothing but cheat and lie. Like, two, we can't do any targets until they have cleared Theater of Blood open world or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And we're like, you're not in a bargaining play. Like, you have fucking like 30 people in your guild.
Yeah. I think we should say, like, we kind of smelled blood in the water at this point.
Yeah. Like, we're not.
DODH was actually really close.
Because they had a huge issue. Oh my God. They had a lot of issues with something in demiplane.
We weren't racing, and we almost beat them just going at our pace. We stayed up late like that first night, I think, right?
Yeah, that was the first time we stayed up late, and it was actually we had just absorbed Altered Minds, and we had told them, hey, we don't really go hard anymore, like other than launches. You know, we don't stay up that late. And the first demiplane is a 6 a.m. Pacific, I think.
Yeah.
Which wasn't planned. It was just like we were going, and we were just like, and this is another time we had a little bit of an argument. Is like we were wiping on Performer, and the DZ was about to close, and you're like, hey, let's just hit Performer, open the DZ, hit Performer, and then we can do Mayon tomorrow. I was like, bro, if we're hitting Performer, we're gonna do fucking Mayon. And you're like, all right, you know. But it was like, I don't remember what you said, but it was like it's something like okay, Seeger, or something like that.
I don't remember, but it's. I was probably just butthurt about how you said it.
Yeah. I mean, which is fair.
Yeah.
But we ended up repopping the DZ, killing Performer, and then staying up. Yeah. And I mean, that was like 6 a.m.
I remember, like, I was happy just to be like on the raid. You know what I mean? Because do you remember you guys had like a whole discussion about, oh, we have like one more key. Who should we bring? And you guys like settled on like letting me come into the raid.
Yeah.
Because like I hadn't put my time in. You know what I mean? I didn't expect to be on the raid.
And it was just that I think it was just that like, we were just kind of feeling this, like, it was not like you versus like 100% RA person, right? It was
no, like
you versus like another, like a 40% RA, like sketch.
No, I think it was, totally done fairly. Like there wasn't a great person for that slot. People knew I would stay up and I could like play the class at least competently. And,
rewinding a little bit, DON is when Classic WoW launches.
Oh, so we lose Reese and Ansel?
That Reese, Ansel, Bashies, every officer besides Lorglath quits. And Lorglath is not like a raid leader officer.
He's a DKP dude, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like, admin stuff, and so Seeger, I can, like, we're making, like, I'm watching Seeger build splits, and we're up until then we're 3 splitting Anguish. We go down to 2 splits after the Classic WoW shit.
Yeah.
And he basically sends me a tell. He's like, hey, just make sure the other split, like with Lorglath, gets rolling, because like Lorglath is going to do loot, and if you have done Anguish in a guild that moves fast, you get to do KTH, and then you're doing loot. You're in the loot window until OMM.
Yeah,
because bosses just
the only break you get is like Warden Hanvar to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, you get Warden Hanvar. You get to run, like, because like the officers would just sit at KTH and just do loot. You know,
the free trade is so nice just for things like that. You know, just bag it all. Mischief is
We
such a
had the
good
same
server.
issue in Plane of Fire.
Yeah.
Etheria cabinet we would do Fen and Row first,
Yeah.
and he would just chill at Fen and Row, and we would kill all the bosses. We would finish like rep arm before he finished Fen and Loot.
Yeah.
So Seeger's basically, hey, like just make sure the raid keeps going because it's Seeger and like Bosch is like, basically a standard 50% RA officer because sometimes you got busy and sometimes so. And that's when I reached out to Etheria, to cabinet, and I was like, do you think Seeger needs help? I really don't want to be a fucking officer, but like I can see it wearing on him. Like having to do 2 splits and like not having control of it. Like you just don't like you can't run a two split guild with 2 officers.
Right.
Like 1 guild leader and 1 officer. And so begrudgingly, Etheria went back and forth with Seeger, and Seeger was like, I thought he didn't want to be. He doesn't. But like I'd rather the server not die or like the guild not die because Seeger burns out. So that's when I became an officer. And I think I don't know if you promoted someone else at the same time. I think Dankster came later. I think Dankster was in DODH, became an officer.
Yeah.
But and then in DODH is also when Gorgasm became an officer to do DKP for Raid 2.
I felt like DODH, the guild it transformed again. You know what I mean? It became super strong.
Yeah, because Ansel also came back.
Yeah. He's a great raid leader.
Yeah, and Reese was there most of the time. So like Raid 1 had Seeger, Ansel, and Reese. Reese was the typical Raid 2 leader up until this point. And so that's, Ansel and Reese either one can raid lead. Seeger can do DKP and loot. And then Gorgasm was doing my admin stuff. And then I can raid lead. And then Dankster, we got Dankster who could also help raid lead. And like,
it's always good when you don't have to have the same people raid leading every single night, when you can rotate.
And like, for the most part, it basically, for the most part, it was me raid leading raid 2 because I had 100% RA. But Dankster also like took different roles. Like he would move the raid forward and I would be working on like explaining the next raid or whatever, like strategy, and he would just be progressing the raid. And that's, I mean, that was the officer crew that lasted basically until live.
Wow.
Towards the late in the cycle, we got we promoted Zakal, but Zakal was always like a de facto raid. Like he was always kind of an officer because he would do all the progression. Zakal is basically the greatest EverQuest player I've ever seen. Like in the world of that we care about competition, he is the Michael Jordan of MQ, or not MQ.
What? Oh.
What's funny is he is the Michael Jordan of EverQuest. What's funny is he doesn't MQ, and he's been accused of so many times.
Yeah, because
he just he plays so well. Like, and there's times when he's hot mic'd, and you just hear like rabid typing because he has his numpads, and he's just fucking going. It's insane. So, Zakal was always doing progression, which we were always like, oh, well, Zakal do it, So he's always kind of an officer, really.
Yeah.
Because, none of us were going to do that much progression. And yeah, so DODH is when Amtrak. Oh, so
right.
The new officer
making the deal.
Comes in. We decline Amtrak's offer for theirs.
And they pretty much fall apart immediately.
Basically, the next day, we set up, we form up for Demiplane.
And I see them start dropping their guild tags like in the fucking.
They're forming up for Demiplane, and we're like, oh, and then guild tags start dropping. Seeger starts getting a bunch of DMs and a bunch of tells, and apparently Drillson, Drillson, I think just said like, I'm done. Whoever wants to step up and be leader, speak up.
And no one
no
stepped
one
up.
did.
Yeah.
And they just disbanded right there.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny because I used to bust Drill's balls all the time when I was on. I would send him tells to be like, hey, so what guild are you going to join when Amtrak dies? Like, yeah, are you going to come over to Faceless? You know what I mean? And when he joined Faceless, I took a screenshot of Drillison on the Who with the Faceless tag, just so I would just have that in my back pocket forever. You know what I mean? If there's ever a TL resurgence, I'll be like, oh, this guy, this Faceless member, Drillison? Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's funny because like they had the counter offer, we declined, and then basically the next day they disbanded.
Yeah.
So yeah, they disband the next day. It's hilarious. What's funny is I think a week or two before that is when Astral joins us because he sees the writing on the wall. You know, he's not dumb. Like he knows what's happening. He doesn't like want to be leader, so he joins the guild. And I'm pretty sure
he's another one of those players who's like in the top tier of EverQuest performers, right?
Yeah. And the reason like Astral's been an ROI forever. Obviously, huge, really good player. The reason I put Zakal so highly is that he's boxed through every era of the game. Like every single era. You know, he 4+ boxed. So and was like a performer on each character.
Yeah.
But Astral leaves a couple days before, and then Amtrak implodes. Obviously, there's a couple no's, like we don't take QP, we don't take Grisvok, under no circumstances. The rest, like Zooted, Troy lasted all the way until he's in the guild now. Bunch of other people join, and that's kind of where we're solo on the server. Besides, like the other casual guilds.
Yeah. And we probably have we're going to wrap here, but we probably have you're good, Frank. Thank you. We probably have about another 30 minutes or so to go over this, which we will do as part 2 of our Cello video. So we'll wrap up the pursuit to live, and we'll do that in about a week or so. But yeah, this was part 1. We went through the competitive part, and now we're going to go into like nitty gritty details from Prophecy of Ro up to reaching live, dealing with competition on live guilds and some of the shit that goes on live servers. But the long and short of it is Faceless stuck around on Cello until it reached all the way to live, and they currently raid on live. So with that said, I want to thank everyone who stuck around. I know this is a long one, and we definitely stretched. You know, I think Frank and I just enjoyed chatting about this a little bit more than we expected, so we stretched beyond our time slot here. But we'll wrap this up with another episode soon. Look forward to that. Look forward to more lore. We've got Giant Lore and the Cleric Epic also coming out pretty soon here. So again, thanks for Frank coming on the show. Look forward to part 2. And thanks for everybody watching part 1 of the Cello server history.